Hello everyone, and welcome back to our inventory system series in Godot 4. I know that in the last video I said that we are done with our inventory system, and we pretty much are, but I just wanted to show you how to incorporate a few extra and optional features. In this video, we will start by creating our hotbar. Now, a hotbar provides us with shortcuts to specific items in our inventory system. We can assign or unassign inventory items to our hotbar on demand. This will help us by quickly using or accessing items that we frequently use by pressing shortcut keys on our keyboard, such as keys 1 to 5, without having to navigate to our main inventory system each time we want to use these items. This video might be a bit long, so buckle up and let's open up our project. Now, before we do anything, let's create a new scene with a control node as its root node. Rename this root node to Inventory Hotbar and save it underneath your Scenes folder. Also attach a script to this scene and save it in your scripts folder. To this scene, we will add a HBox container node that will allow us to stack our slots in a horizontal box at the bottom of our screen. Now, we want this hotbar to be fixed to the bottom of our screen, so select your control node and change its anchor preset to bottom wide. Then, we will center our HBox container node at the bottom of the screen, so select it and change its anchor preset to center bottom. We also want to give it some padding so that it's not so low on the screen, so change its Y transform property to -50. Finally, we'll want to add some space in between the slots that we'll add in a bit, so navigate to Theme Overrides, Constants, and give it a separation value of 10. We can then go ahead to our player scene and add this hotbar to our screen. Add a new canvas layer node and rename it to Inventory Hotbar. To this canvas layer, instance your Inventory Hotbar scene. I only want this hotbar to show if we are in the game screen, and not if our main inventory window is open. So, in our player script, let's create a new node reference to our Inventory Hotbar canvas layer node. Then, whenever we open up our main inventory, we will hide this hotbar inventory. Just a side note, this is just my preference. I don't want my hotbar to show with my main inventory, but depending on the type of inventory that you're trying to create, you might want to show it. It's all just up to you and what you're trying to achieve in the end. We will leave our hotbar scene for now because we'll have to go back to our global script and make some changes to our existing functions. We'll also need to create a few new functions to manage our hotbar inventory, just like we did with our main inventory. At the top of your global script, we'll need to define a new array that will store our hotbar items. We've defined an inventory array before, but the difference with our hotbar inventory is that we'll also have to create a new variable that will hold the size of our hotbar inventory. I will set my hotbar size to 5, so my hotbar will have 5 slots for 5 items. Just like we did with our main inventory, we'll have to instance our hotbar inventory with 5 items on load so that it is always populated on the screen with 5 available slots. Now, just like with our main inventory, we'll have to create 2 new functions that will add and remove items to the hotbar. So let's create a new function called add item to hotbar, which will add an item to the hotbar. Just like with our add item function, it will take an item as a parameter to store the item that we currently want to add to the hotbar. We want to iterate through our hotbar inventory array and place the item that we want to add to the hotbar inventory in the first available slot. We'll only add the item to this available slot if it exists because we don't want to add an invalid or non-existing item to our inventory or hotbar inventory. If we are successful at adding the item, we will return true. Otherwise, we will return false since the item cannot or should not be added. With that created, we can go back to our add item function and edit it a bit to add an item either to our inventory or hotbar. We'll give it a new parameter of type Boolean, which will indicate whether or not the item that we want to add should be added to the hotbar. So if we are initially picking up an item, when we interact with it and press E to add it to our inventory, this Boolean value should be false, since we want to add it to our main inventory and not our hotbar. But whenever we want to assign an item to our hotbar, this Boolean value should be true, since we want to add the item to our hotbar inventory. Initially, we'll want to set this toHotbar variable to false, since we want to reset this value when we pick up a new item. Now, if this value is true, meaning we want to add an item to our hotbar, then we will try to add the item to the hotbar by calling the addHotbarItem function. We'll also need to emit our signal to update our inventory and hotbar inventory UI. If we don't want to add an item to our hotbar, meaning the value is false and we want to add it to our main inventory instead, then we will execute the rest of our function that we created in the previous parts. Since we don't initially want to add an item that we pick up off the ground to our hotbar inventory, we'll have to go back to our inventory item script where we add an item to the inventory and set the second parameter, the Boolean parameter, to true or false. We want it to be false since we want to add the item to our inventory and not our hotbar. We'll call this function again whenever we assign an item to our hotbar, But for now, let's get back to our global script and create the function to remove an item from the hotbar. You might be wondering why we don't do it in our existing remove item function, and this is because it's just generally better to separate your hotbar and inventory from one another so that we can better manage and synchronize our inventories by keeping them separate instead of making them one thing. Okay, so let's create a new function called remove hotbar item. The function will take an item effect and type parameter just like our remove item function. To remove an item, we'll have to loop through our hotbar inventory array, and based on the item type and effect, we will remove it from the slot. If the quantity of the item that we want to remove reaches 0, then we'll remove it completely by setting its slot to null. We'll also have to emit the signal to notify our UI of changes. Now back in our inventory slot script, whenever we use or drop an item, we should also remove the item from the hotbar. So if the item is dropped or used from our main inventory, the update should occur in our hotbar inventory as well, and vice versa. The same goes for the quantity. So if the item is used in either inventory, the quantity should be updated or it should be removed completely depending on the value that you have. We don't want our main inventory to have 7 apples and our hotbar to have 8, even though it's the same item that's been assigned from our main inventory to our hotbar. Okay, with that done, we'll actually need to create one last function in our global script, which will allow us to unassign an item from our inventory. So we have our remove hotbar item function, which removes one item from the inventory up until it reaches 0, then it will fully remove it from the slot. But when we unassign an item from our inventory, we don't want to drop it in the world or decrease its quantity. No, we simply want to just remove it from our hotbar and put it back in our main inventory. So let's create a new function called unassign hotbar item. This function will work exactly like the remove hotbar item function, but instead of decreasing the quantity, we are going to clear the hotbar slot completely. With our add, remove, and assign functions out of the way, we can create the button which will allow us to assign or unassign our hotbar items from our main inventory. So back in our inventory slot scene, underneath our usage panel, we'll need to add a new button which will allow us to assign an item to our hotbar. Rename this button to Assign Button. Now select your usage panel container and change its size to 190 on the y-axis and its transform to -193 on the y-axis. Select your drop button and change its anchor preset to center bottom. Then, select your Assign button and change its size to 230 on the x-axis and 49 on the y-axis. We'll also need to change its anchor preset to center left. Then we'll change its X position to be +5. And then finally change its font to Arcade Classic size 40. I changed my text to be assigned, but it doesn't really matter since we will change this text depending on the inventory that our item is in. So if we click on an item on our main inventory and that item isn't in the hotbar inventory, then the text should be assigned. But if we've already assigned the item to the hotbar, then the text should be unassigned. The same goes for our hotbar inventory. Attach the Assign button's press signal to your script. Don't forget to hide your usage panel again. In our inventory slot script, we'll need to create a node reference to our Assign button node. We'll also need to create a variable that will represent each slot index. This will act as an identifier for each slot in the hotbar, which is essential for knowing which specific slot in the hotbar we are interacting with or trying to modify, especially since the hotbar has multiple slots. We'll default this value to an invalid index such as -1, which will tell the game that the slot is not yet assigned a valid position within the inventory and hotbar, meaning the item doesn't exist. We'll then have to create a new function which will set the slot index in the hotbar. With our slot index created, we can go back to our inventory hotbar script and create our slots for each index of our hotbar inventory. But first, we'll need to create a node reference to our HBox container, which will actually hold these slots. Now, just like with our inventory, we'll need to create a signal function or connector function that will connect to our inventory updated signal from our global script so that our hotbar UI can update whenever the inventory updated signal is emitted. This will update our hotbar and our inventory UI whenever an update occurs to either inventories. Just like with our main inventory, we'll also need to create a function that will clear the hotbar container before we add or remove an item. In our ready function, we will connect our update hotbar connector function to our signal, just like we did with our inventory UI script. Let's first complete our clear hotbar container function, since this is almost exactly the same as our inventory UI script's clear grid container function. We'll just be clearing the hotbar container instead. In our update hotbar function, after clearing the container, we will iterate over each available index in our hotbar inventory size so that we can create a slot for each index. For each created slot, we will also set its slot index by calling our setSlotIndex function from our inventory slot script. This is important for identifying the slot within the hotbar and managing its contents. We'll then add the slot to the hotbar container. Just like with our inventory UI, we'll check if an item is present in the hotbar inventory, and if it is, we will stack the item by assigning it to the existing slot. If the item does not exist yet, we will just set the slot to be empty. Now, if you were to run your scene now, your hotbar inventory should be created, and it should be created with the amount of slots that you assign to it. Before we go on any further, this part is getting a bit long, so we will break it off here, and in the next part, we will add and remove items from our hotbar and update our assignment button to reflect the correct text. That's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.